Let's do it.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World, episode 88. We are creeping slowly towards triple figures. It might take us, I don't know how long. Too much other stuff going on. I'm John Jordan, and joining me this week for the fourth time we've worked out. So rising to the top of the leaderboard for invited guests, we've got Gabby. Hi, Gabby. How's it going?
It is for the record.
I think so. I think there are a few people I've spoken to 3 times, and there's a few on the list who I think you may be joined by other people on 4 in the near future, but I think you are the first to hit 4.
Nice. It goes to show how old I am in this space.
We've seen it all, haven't we? We've seen it all. Yes. How could we forget the Irish pub in Dubai? That was a classic.
That was very enjoyable.
It was actually. It was a nice one. Yeah, actually, that was the first video cast. That was the first experiment with video. Yeah. But a long time ago now. Things have changed, thank goodness. So you're very involved in blockchain gaming and more generally in blockchain, which we may kind of cover. But to begin with, at least, I kind of thought it'd be good time to catch up again, particularly because your involvement with Yield Guild, which I have problems saying. Yield Guild. So, do you want to just explain what is Yield Guild?
Yield Guild, or you can just call it YGG. I think that's
YGT.
Yeah. So Yield Guild is basically a play-to-earn gaming guild. So we are a guild of people in the same way like there's a World of Warcraft guild, but these group of people are organized around playing play-to-earn games, so games wherein people can play games and basically earn money, or in this particular case, crypto. So the experience started from the community of Axie Infinity, because you could play Axie Infinity in multiplayer and earn the SLP token, right? And from there, we had an incredible experience last year during the lockdown, where so many people were basically saved by Axie playing SLP, that I thought it was something that we could organize around and do in a scalable manner. So I pitched the idea, gathered a couple of co-founders, and in around late November, Yield Guild was born.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's kind of dig into this a little bit. So the people who don't know, you're based in the Philippines, and there was quite good coverage about what was happening with Axie Infinity and the Small Love Potion. The pricing of that had some very interesting dynamics, which weren't really anything to do with you, but allowed that play to earn thing to kind of kickstart. So, but I presume this is, although probably there's a lot of people in the Philippines who are part of this, because that's the community you kind of kicked it off with. Is this open to everyone? How do people get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. We have people from around the world. There are people in America, in Europe, around Southeast Asia. A lot of the numbers are, apart from Philippines, like Indonesia. Okay. We're seeing Venezuela, Brazil, a little bit of Morocco, and a lot of my friends from the blockchain and NFT space that I've kind of dragged along into our Discord server. So we're actually nearing 4,000 people now in the Discord server. Wow. And we are basically gathered to play in different games. So apart from Axie Infinity, people are actively playing League of Kingdoms, for example. We're also playing Formula 1 Delta Time, where we have an esports team that is just starting to race. And apart from the games that we have invested in and are lending out NFTs to our player community, there's just a bunch of other games with the play-to-earn component that people are trying out and talking about and enjoying.
Mm-hmm. So let's kind of dig into a bit of detail. I guess probably Axie is the one to start with. So you need 3 Axies in order to play the game. That's just the mechanic. You need a team of 3. That's the minimum. And I was looking the other day, and obviously there's a whole bunch of work going on with their layer 2, but with with Ethereum gas prices very high, it means people aren't breeding the Axies. And I think it was well over $100 actually for just one Axie at the moment. So we have like an entry level of kind of multiple kind of $300. So you're talking about kind of lending Axies. How does that kind of play out? How do we on the blockchain allow people to borrow Axies off us to play the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with SLP, because Axies can earn SLP, it's starting to get basically expensive to buy the Axies, and also because of the high price of ETH. So the practice that we started last year, which is to lend out axes to our player base, the demand has only grown because the it's become prohibitive cost-wise to basically start to buy your own first three axes and then lend them out to your players. So we have where they have a community manager that recruits and trains these players on how to play. The people that play Axie Infinity are scholars, or are they get 70% of the SLP that they earn.
Mm.
20% goes to their community manager, and 10% goes to the guild. The
Okay.
guild puts up all of the upfront costs, all of the gas fees. So all a player really has to do is just start playing and earning.
Mm-hmm. And how do you, in the blockchain space, we talk a lot about bad actors. So I guess you're just starting out, but what
Mhm.
mechanics do you have in place for people doing things they shouldn't be doing?
Okay, so one of the mechanics we have is that people actually don't have access to the private key, to the axes that we're lending out. So
Mm.
they can log into the game via username, password, basically, and start interacting with the account, playing the game. But they can't run away with the axes that we lend them. So that's a critical part for us
Yeah.
to be able to scale our lending operation. Is that we know that, yeah, we're not going to lose the axes, right?
Yeah. Um, does that go against some T's and C's about sharing accounts? How do you fit into
Right.
that?
So for the Axie Infinity terms of service, basically one person has to pilot one account. So there's no problem lending out as
Okay.
long as there's only one player playing in that account. So if there are people who are caught, for example, playing with different accounts, then those accounts get banned and those Axies get banned as well. So
Mm.
they're like time out. You can't play them on in the game for a while.
Mm-hmm. Do you think? Obviously, it's very early days. Will games kind of start to allow this in a bit more? Or will you guys come up with kind of better tools for dealing with that? Because at the moment, it sounds a little bit like you're not handing over private keys, but you're handing over kind of some sort of access to accounts, which is
Right.
obviously there can be malicious stuff, or there can be just stuff that goes wrong. So how are you guys looking at that at all?
Right. So in the short term, we're actually talking to a lot of other games that have seen the rise of play to earn in
Mm,
Axie and kind of the relevance of I guess coordinated guilds that have funds to deploy. It's kind of still a new concept. Usually the ones with funds are typically like more like VCs that
yeah.
just buy or invest into tokens and just basically sit until on these assets until the prices go higher. So we take a very active gameplay approach. So we're doing this in two ways. One, the games that we talk to are looking at some sort of lending and guild-based accounts
Okay.
in the games that they are developing because of the growth of Axie Infinity. Second and longer term is that we're coordinating with other game developers with the Blockchain Game Alliance on an NFT rental standard on Ethereum. So this
Oh,
basically
cool.
extends the NFT ERC 721 standard and wraps it in a rental contract so that yeah, people can basically rent out their NFTs, and the one that is leasing it basically cannot sell it on OpenSea, for example, or
Mm,
there are certain rules wherein they maybe have to pay by a certain time or else the owner gets it back. It's not something that exists yet in the ERC 721 standard, but it's something that we want to push through as an industry because once we're able to pass this standard, I think NFT usage will really shoot up when you can safely rent an NFT out.
mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna share the screen. I'll just share the at least people can see what the see your website. Seeking yield
Wow.
across the metaverse. So okay, sign up for the Substack as well. Yeah, that's a really good point, because when I first kind of got into kind of blockchain and gaming, like 3 years ago, people used to talk actually I think a lot more about kind of renting out swords, and it's a big tournament, you might want to rent out this kind of thing for the tournament, and
Yeah.
and while I could see technically you could do that, I couldn't really see quite I couldn't really see that being a big thing, and maybe it's just me. To me, I guess we've never had rental in games, So it'd be a new behavior for players to understand. But from this point of view, where it's basically what you're saying is you're pooling, a kind of various accounts or various assets into a structure, and you're renting them out because not to win an individual event, but just because more people want access to those things to play in games. That makes total sense. I mean, that's kind of what blockchain was kind of created to enable these very novel use cases, which allow a totally different kind of economic behavior to come about.
Yeah, so if you think about it, what we're doing is that we're matching capital and labor in a way wherein the labor can actually benefit from the upside. So think of a normal job where someone is paid maybe an hourly wage, and then they're giving tools by the employer, and they don't have any equity or upside in what they're earning. And if they stop going to work, they basically stop getting paid, right? The nice thing about play to earn in the instance of an Axie Infinity, for example, is that if there is upside to what you're earning, you basically have access to that upside as well. And in exchange, you're not employees of the guild, definitely not. Like if you don't show up, you're not going to get anything. But what we do is that we lend you the tools so that you can earn something for yourself with your skill, with your time. And this is a lot more than you can say with basically any free-to-play game, where the most you can probably get is like a few gems for clicking on an ad, right? So here, like, I'm not going to say that this is a replacement to your daily wage or full-time job. Absolutely not. But you can actually get paid like a real amount of money for playing a game.
And it does very, whenever we think about like the gig economy, that very much fits into that sort of thing, which is people, people have flexibility, and they are taking, on any individual day might be taking multiple jobs. They may be stopping for a period of time. They may be, there's a flexibility there, which obviously has downsides, but equally kind of has upsides. And I say this kind of in slightly a kind of ridiculous fashion, but it is kind of interesting. I wonder what Karl Marx would think of it, because it is this kind of, whenever you talk about capital and labor, that's always that's always kind of that's the basis of Marxism, that the capitalist system is kind of rigged against the workers. And I'm not saying blockchain is going to kind of solve the world's economic problems, but you start to see an idea how it does disrupt in conjunction with kind of online working and that sort of thing. But as soon as you have a economic system where stuff can be owned and secured and trusted and can't be double spent, then you allow, particularly, it's interesting, you guys in the Philippines, but it allows a really kind of a potentially spectacular increase of kind of wages in lower wage countries. I don't think it drops down the wages in higher wage countries. I think it really brings the bottom up, because suddenly the economic system is now available to anyone, where previously they've been locked out for structural reasons. So without getting too over the top, I think this sort of stuff is really it's kind of super important for kind of world economics, really. Maybe I'm going too far.
Absolutely.
Am I going too far, Gabby?
No. I've thought of this a lot, and one of the backlash against, for example, an Uber is that it's like once a person stops earning, like they stop getting their hourly wage, and they have nothing, and they don't even have insurance, they don't have unemployment, right? What if these Uber drivers were basically paid in Uber stock instead of an hourly wage? So this is the equivalent. When you're looking at a token-based economy, like we're doing with Axie Infinity, for example, you're earning something, you still have the upside. And one of the things that blockchain is really good at is basically incentive alignment via token ownership, and combine that with asset ownership of NFTs. So the people who are playing Axie Infinity and basically waking up and playing with their Axies every day, they don't wake up and say, "Oh, do I want to play this or not?" They're like, "Okay, I want to earn my 200 SLP, 300 SLP today, and like I'm good." So it's actually more like driving your Uber to work, except that you're driving your Axie to earn SLP.
And I guess another, that because they're earning a cryptocurrency, they can obviously choose to kind of sell it straight away and get like a local currency, or presumably there's stable coins or however that kind of fiat out system works. Or as you say, they could save some of it, keep it in the crypto space, go and get another token, they don't have to be could go and earn, fairly simply 10% interest on
Right.
a fairly, I mean, it's not without risk, but a DeFi dApp's going to give them 10%, fairly straightforwardly without taking on too much weird kind of tokenomics. And then suddenly, not only are they kind of sort of more in control of their work life and playing a game, but also it's maybe fix some of the problems they have about not being banked and not having very secure kind of banking and having cash around and stuff, and suddenly they've got effectively like a savings account, and if they want to get really funky, they can start doing margin trading. I shouldn't suggest no one should do margin trading, but there are probably some great people in the Philippines who, if you gave them the tools to do margin trading, would be like billionaires. So the problem is that at the moment they can't get access to those things, and it's all the kind of hot shots in Wall Street or wherever, where clearly we know talents around the world, and it's just the kind of opportunity to get it. So I think I'm probably
I think
going too far, but
no, that's great. So one of the common patterns that we're seeing is that when we onboard players as scholars, first they do it to put some food on the table, get some basic needs met, and then after a while they actually don't withdraw their SLP as often. They kind of save it and wait until there's a spike in price until they withdraw. So that means they're actually starting to get an investment mindset. And once they have the basic needs covered, they do things like they sell their SLP and buy AXS, which is the governance token, which is kind of as more like equity features than a play to earn token, right? Or they buy land, and the land in Axie is getting quite expensive, but in League of Kingdoms, one of our lands were available for $80, and then suddenly you're a landowner in a game. So one of the mottos that we have is that we're turning gamers into investors. So there's a huge part of financial literacy there in the form of just playing games. And it has such a huge impact on these people. And I think in the West, people don't see that impact as much because, at least a lot of people have some access to money. They are banked. They may or may not have a lot of money, but they are at least banked at the very least. So just this kind of phenomenon where people are doing financial literacy by playing these play to earn games and actually learning how to save for themselves for their future is it's really amazing to see.
So I guess there probably are other guilds out there like this, or there'll be other ones starting off because it's such a great idea. But you guys, obviously, in the first, you got 5,000 people signed up. I mean, you guys have quite a kind of power base in the industry sort of already. So how are you thinking of using that? Because obviously, I mean, you're a game developer yourself. You've developed blockchain games. I imagine your community is quite highly valued for people say, can you come and play our game, please?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is we've started talking to a lot of other developers in being able to invest in assets in the game. And when I say invest, not only in the NFT assets in the game, like land or armor, but also in the governance token. So interestingly, we've found ourselves investing in like early stage VC rounds where we're not a VC. We're actually not putting in a lot of money compared to the VCs of that these funds are coming in. But these game developers value us in their investment rounds because we bring a lot more than money. Like everyone has a lot of money. We bring players, we bring community, and actually that's something that no other VC can give to these other developers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating how you're morphing from what became a kind of a sharing of a few axes into this again, bagging on the blockchain thing. This is kind of how
in 3 months.
Yeah. So how many of these games do you think can you mentioned a few. How many can there be? So we've got Axie, that's pretty well regarded. I mean, you've been heavily involved in that for a number of years. We've got F1 Delta Time, which is probably a bit more of a high rollers thing. Is my kind of view on that.
It's more of an esports game than a farming game, if you know what I mean.
You need like a higher investment to get into that one, I think. Would that be right?
Higher investment, and you have to place to earn rewards. So like you have to be like kind of like placed near the top, I guess.
Leaderboard based,
whatever bracket. Yeah. So we have an esports team there, not basically a farming team.
Okay. How many games do you think you could kind of sustain with your kind of present levels? I mean, obviously, I guess it depends on what games people are interested in. You can't really force them to play games they're not interested in. But...
So the interesting thing about what we're doing is it's community led.
Mm,
So there's a lot of games in our Discord server. We didn't invest in all of them, but our guild members play all of them. And because our guild members play a lot of games, we actually get to identify the ones that number one have a good play to earn economic loop,
mm,
and second, like investments that we can basically buy into and then lend to our player base. So that's how we evaluate investing in the game. So it's like we play a lot of different games, but there's actually a much smaller criteria of games that we can invest into.
And how big? I mean, obviously, Discord has, for me, becomes quite chaotic quite quickly. So how you're doing 5,000 people is
Mhm.
pretty impressive. Obviously, lots of different kind of channels in there.
Yeah.
Is there a kind of a size which you can a size beyond which you can't operate, or do you have, I don't know what happens when you break off and have children
Okay.
children guilds or something?
No, that's a question. The goal of Yield Guild actually is to basically become a DAO of DAOs, and this is something
Okay,
that I have to explain because
yeah,
it's a concept that I actually have never seen in the blockchain space before. So the problem with a guild that gets big is that it gets too crowded, right? Like there's
yeah,
so many people, and you kind of lose agency at the individual level because like there's just so many people around. You're not sure what you're doing matters. So what we're doing is that each game is actually its own little community, its
mm,
own little sub DAO.
okay,
And when I say sub DAO, we take the wallet containing the assets, containing the yield that produces, and we tokenize this into its own token, basically representing the assets we have. And so we tokenize it in the way that Niftex shards NFTs, for example, and we sell the token at cost of the assets to the players that are actively playing the game. So this is kind of the labor part of the equation. The people who are actively playing the game, they are basically like employee stockholders, except
mm,
that like they're not paid a daily wage. They actually kind of own the equivalent of equity in our assets in the game. And basically, the better that they manage it, they run it on their own, then the larger their holdings grow, right? So now we've only tokenized our wallet in League of Kingdoms.
mm-hmm,
We're going to do that in Axie. We're going to do that in F1 Delta Time. We're going to do that in Sandbox. So you see the people who are most interested in a particular game gravitating towards that game, receiving those sub tokens, so like YGG, LOK token, YGG Axie token, and they're basically equity holders of our kind of stake in those games. So I think this is a structure that can scale. I
mm,
don't see that anybody has done it before, but
mm.
yeah, we sure hell we're gonna try.
Yeah, you've built an incredible amount of stuff. I'm amazed, really, how far you've gone down. Um, so, and obviously, the reason you can do this is because you're running on a permissionless blockchain. You're running on Ethereum. The games you play are on
Mhm.
Ethereum, or maybe on layer twos now. So, obviously, the cost of business on Ethereum is now very expensive.
Yeah.
I imagine you're not kind of religiously inclined towards Ethereum. It's just where stuff is, and it's just where a lot of the tools are. I mean, how quickly do you think you go cross chain? Do you just kind of follow the games, or I guess going
Yeah,
cross chain?
yeah, absolutely. We do follow the game.
Yeah.
So we've looked at games that are on Matic, that are on Solana, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, we're blockchain agnostic. I think the kind of core DAO framework will live on kind of Ethereum and a sidechain solution
Mm,
like Matic. But yeah, we can invest in games across different chains.
okay. Good. Okay, well, that was a good overview of that. While I've got you here, I think I would like to chat a little bit about art, which is actually what our podcast was all about last time. And I guess since that time, you've I don't know. I mean, you've become quite an art collector.
Prolific.
And particularly
a,
good.
spend, a
Yeah,
spender.
spender. Yeah, but it's been interesting. So a lot of the a lot of the focus has been around these very big high cost NFTs and Bleeple and all that sort of very high end stuff where the big whales come in and kind
Yeah.
of like to sort of show off a little bit. That's kind of part of what they're doing. But you've been very much and very committed to kind of finding finding new people coming on and taking a slightly different approach. So is that just because that's the art that you like? Is there a more kind of altruistic kind of bent to what you're trying to do? Can you give us a bit of an overview on your view on crypto
Sure.
art?
Well, I think part of that is budgetary because like I don't have like 20, 30 ETH to spend around on single artworks. But a big part of it is kind of my philosophy on like why I'm in blockchain as well.
Mm,
So in the same way that Yield Guild is basically helping people, turning them from gamers into investors, I apply the same philosophy to investing in my crypto art, where I like to discover the up and coming artists that that are pretty good, they're talented, but they haven't made a name for themselves, are yet undiscovered. And I can basically help fund their early works by buying their artwork and kind of helping them along to kind of build a name for themselves. And it's not 100% altruistic. Of course, if they make it, then I'll be able to resell some of the works later on at a
mm,
much higher price. But more than that, this is really the part of the space that I enjoy, just finding the kind of the raw hidden gems and just kind of helping them along their journey and like see them blossom into stars someday.
mm. Have you got into the state yet of sort of buying stuff up and then kind of actively trying to resell it to kind of not to make money yourself, but also to, because you're buying stuff and then to raise the artist up. That if it's
Yeah.
I don't know if you're at the stage yet where people go, they probably do. Like, oh, Gabby bought a whole bunch of my stuff and now he's selling it. And now the price because he's owned it and people are interested to see what you're buying, and then you put it at a higher price, and then you're kind of starting the kind of price discovery for some of these artists. Is that something you've done with a
So
business head on, or is it still a bit more sort of fun?
uh I think my effect has been less than what you said, but
Okay.
there are definitely have been some artists I've collected whose prices have gone a lot higher than
Mm,
when I started collecting them. Like I won't take full credit for that, but one of the artists that I work with, Daniela Atfield, she's a 22-year-old South African artist. I bought up a lot of her work for basically around 1 ETH and under, and now she's selling works regularly for 5 ETH. I
mm,
sold one of her works that I owned for 4.5 last month. And yeah, it's just amazing to see kind of she's found her next batch of collectors that will take her to the next level. So she's now minting less, like
mm,
focusing on quality, less in quantity. And her early works are still accessible. They're still being snapped up by basically collectors who have lower budgets. So it's just great all around to see these artists being to make a sustainable living from the art that they do.
mm, mm. Good. And more generally, I mean, you've been around blockchain longer than me. How do you see the current situation? Obviously, kind of everyone's generally happy, and now 2021 has been a good year to be in it. But I guess aside from pricing, do you think we've started that kind of perception, a flick of perception, more generally, that people don't go, well, Bitcoin's all about kind of terrorism and kind of Silk Road
it,
and NFTs are not. I've just screenshot your NFT. Have we moved beyond that? I mean, how far have we moved beyond that? Is it uphill all the way? Is it up all the way now, or how kind of nuanced should we be about kind of where the space is?
what's interesting is that NFTs have actually broken out into its own category. So it started wherein there's currency like Bitcoin or ETH, and then there's DeFi, which basically you can do some magical things with trading and liquidity. And NFTs is kind of seen as kind of like I guess inferior to that before, like
Mm,
you can trade it for such big sums. But now NFTs are basically crypto media. People are minting media on it, whether it's a painting, it's a video, it's a piece of music. And it's escaped from its own crypto bubble into basically the cultural trendsetters. And a lot of this has to do with basically both Twitter and Clubhouse, where the cool people actually started minting NFTs. And because of that, the people who follow the trends are starting to buy them. And then now celebrities are buying, celebrities are making their own NFTs, which means pop culture cannot be that far behind. You have
mm,
actually seen some celebrities doing it already. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that like people thought that Bitcoin would be the reason to get mass adoption, but it is actually I think NFTs that are first going to get us there.
mm, mm. A lot less abstract. How do you think blockchain gaming is kind of faring? It seems to have, certainly not in really in anyone's focus at the moment, although there are kind of obviously NFTs are a key part of that. But it seems we haven't certainly had a breakout game yet, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a slower grind because you kind of have to demonstrate that a game works in an ecosystem that can live on for years. It's easier to appreciate a collectible, right? Like CryptoPunks, where you can appreciate I guess, the aesthetics and the scarcity and the traits for what they are without them having to exist in a larger context. It's the same thing as art. Like the art is the art,
Mm.
and like of course you can hang them on a virtual wall or whatever, but
Yeah.
you buy the art for what it is. With a game item, it really has to work within the context of the game, and that's a lot harder to value than a collectible
Yep.
or a piece of art. So I think it's going to be harder, and you're going to need basically several breakout games that break into the hundreds of thousands to millions of DAU for the industry to actually take notice. And interestingly, NFTs are now at the point where it started crossing over in consciousness to, I would say, the mass market. Like most of them have never touched it, but they start hearing these weird things like, Neon Cat selling for however much money, or Beeple selling for $6.6 million. And you're starting to see the culture clash between, the people who were basically in NFTs looking for basically disintermediate the middleman or find freedom for artists. But when the mass media or when the mass artists actually start hearing about it, you see a lot of, I would say, outright rejection or hate or misunderstanding because they don't quite understand what it represents.
Yeah. No, I think there still is it takes, I guess everyone has a kind of I think everyone has to have sort of an individual journey of kind of understanding something of the concept. Maybe we all understand something slightly different, and we don't have to fully understand the 21 million sort of algorithm sort of thing for Bitcoin to understand kind of the blockchain's a thing. And I think I found it interesting that there's some people that I knew who kind of got into Bitcoin, but they wouldn't touch anything else. And now they suddenly take that next step, and then they're going, "What's this NFT thing?" So I think even maybe for some of us who just kind of fell straight into it and just like, "Oh yeah, I kind of get it." And other people is a very kind of like a steps kind of, you have to go with the first step to get to the second step to get to the third step. But and I guess there'll be down steps as well. I guess we're still seeing a little bit now with this kind of NFTs destroying the planet by using all this electricity. Seems to be a very strong meme, which is kind of, it's interesting. It used to be all about Bitcoin, and now it's like, well, you can't buy these NFTs because they're destroying the planet. Which, I mean, currently it's not like there's no argument there, but yeah. Okay, well, I think I will leave it there. I know you're a busy man, and we covered a lot of stuff, and certainly I found that really interesting. So maybe we can come back, and you can be have your fifth appearance when yield has taken over the world. But I think it's quite a lot to unpick there, and I think it is a great demonstration of how kind of blockchain does allow some of these features that I don't know whether they were features that you sat down with a piece of paper and said we can do this, or whether they kind of emergent from you do something and then you go, oh, we can do this and then do that. I guess
Well, I think a lot of the core concept actually comes from the concept of the metaverse from science fiction, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who actually came to blockchain has read about the metaverse at some point. But yeah, I do think that we are at the very early stages of the metaverse, where we have virtual worlds that can have interlinked economies because the economies are sitting on a blockchain, a global computer, basically, where you can exchange value for value. And while it's still very early, I think we're actually seeing the beginnings of the metaverse here, and I think it's very important to build upon that. And yeah, that's what we're doing at Yield Guild.
And if people want to get involved, I guess Discord is the place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Discord.gg/YGG, and show up, pick a game, and start playing with us.
Cool. Easy as that. Lovely. Thank you very much for your time, Gabby. Good to talk to you as ever.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks for having me for the fourth time.
And thanks for you watchers and listeners for coming back to see what's going on with blockchain gaming world, where we are talking to the people who are making this incredible new kind of type of gaming and wider implications as well. So please subscribe either through YouTube or through your podcast of choice, and come back next time to see what's going on in the world of blockchain games. Goodbye.